the commissioners closest to the government who can replace Marlaska's second in command in the police accused of rape. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to a new edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. Attention, because a power struggle has already begun in the National Police after the fall of the Deputy Operational Director José Ángel González, after the court agreed to hear a complaint for nothing less than sexual assault against a colleague, a subordinate police officer. The moves are already starting because, of course, as they say, when one king falls, another takes his place, right? And now there are already favorites, police commanders, chief commissioners, who are being mentioned as favorites. To replace José Ángel González, known as Jota, who was the Deputy Operational Director of the police, which means he was the number 2 in the police, until just a few hours ago. A person who had the full trust of Fernando Grande Marlaska. So stay with us in this video because we have the names of the favorites, of those who are currently being talked about the most within the police to replace the DAO. The DAO who was removed because of that criminal complaint alleging rape for sexual assault against a colleague. Let's share this information on screen and let's analyze all the candidates one by one. If you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel with Miguel Ángel Pérez. And we already have this information on screen. This is a photograph of Fernando Grande Marlaska with the now former DAO of the National Police, José Ángel González, known as Jota, who has had to resign. He was forced to step down from his position. Well, after the court's acceptance of a criminal complaint for crimes of sexual assault, coercion, psychological injury, or embezzlement. So pay attention because we have the names of those who are currently in pole position, okay? To replace the DAO. That doesn't mean one of them will necessarily be chosen, of the ones I'm going to tell you about, because many times when the names come to light, they enter the public conversation and in the press. In the end, someone else is appointed because it's considered that these names have been burned and so on. But I can tell you that right now within the police, there is talk of five names that we are going to analyze. The police commanders closest to the government of Pedro Sánchez are emerging as candidates to replace the recently resigned Deputy Director of Operations, DAO, José Ángel González, one of Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska's most trusted men. The DAO resigned this Tuesday after it became known that a court had accepted for consideration a criminal complaint filed by an officer of the force against him for alleged crimes of sexual assault, psychological injury, coercion, and embezzlement. This Wednesday, José Ángel González's main advisor, Commissioner Oscar San Juan, was also removed from his position after his alleged involvement in the attempt to block the alleged victim's complaint became known. Well, the police sources we've consulted for Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez tell us that as long as Pedro Sánchez remains in power, this is important because if the PP were governing, the situation would be completely different. There are 5 chief commissioners who are especially being considered to become DAO. The Commissioner General for Intelligence, Javier Susín, the head of the Training and Improvement Division, Javier Nogueroles, the Chief Commissioner of Madrid, Javier Galván. The Deputy Director General of the Technical Cabinet of the Police, Almudena Turanca, or the Deputy Director General of Human Resources, Gemma Barroso. They also say that a dark horse candidate cannot be ruled out. What is a dark horse candidate? Well, it's a candidate who is not initially among the main favorites and who is ultimately chosen. It's common that when several names are mentioned, in the end a dark horse emerges and a name that no one expected as a surprise is chosen. That doesn't mean that, as I said, right now there are certain names being talked about more strongly than others within the police, and those are the ones we're going to analyze. The same sources we've consulted for precautionary measures with Miguel Ángel Pérez tell us that Grande Marlaska appointed Javier Susín as head of the General Intelligence Commissariat, known as CGI, in November 2024. After his arrival, there have been successive changes in this commissariat. This police chief was one of the now former DAO José Ángel González's most trusted men, and this could harm him now. In addition to the dismissal of Chief Commissioner Jesus Pedrazo, Susín has replaced other commanders and police officers, substituting them with people he trusts. In recent times, they say the CGI has lost effectiveness to the detriment of the Civil Guard's intelligence service. Other police sources we have consulted tell us that these replacements in the General Intelligence Commissariat unfortunately tend to be common in other commissariats when a new General Commissioner arrives. In other words, these replacements, removing all these people I don't trust and putting in my own, are pretty common in the commissariats when a new General Commissioner takes that position. Another possible candidate for DAO is Javier Nogueroles, the head of the training division. He is one of the best prepared and has been aspiring to the DAO position for many years. However, they say Nogueroles is playing both sides. Therefore, he could end up being chosen by either a PSOE or a PP government. In other words, he doesn't identify with either one, but rather, whoever promotes me, that's who I'll go with, right? Basically. On the other hand, the chief of police in Madrid and the right-hand man of the government delegate Francisco Martín, Javier Galván, is another high-ranking officer who is strongly rumored to be chosen as the deputy director of operations. His wife is, pay attention because this is a family saga, his wife is Commissioner Gemma Sanz, who is the head of internal affairs. His brother Javier Galván is the head of the BOA, which is the police's operational support brigade. And finally, his other brother, Celso Galván, has just been appointed as the new commissioner in Pozuelo de Alarcón, the most sought-after local police station in Madrid. In other words, the entire Galván family is very well placed in senior positions in the upper ranks of the national police. We've mentioned 3 so far, which are Susín, Javier Nogueroles, Javier Galván, and now we get to the 2 female frontrunners, okay? 2 commissioners who are being strongly mentioned. The Deputy Director General of the Technical Cabinet of the Police, Almudena Tudanca, who is perceived internally as being very close to Pedro Sánchez's socialist government, okay? Very close. The other candidate is the Deputy Director General of Human Resources, Gemma Barroso, although she has a very low profile, we're told, and she isn't considered to have enough authority to take charge of the police. It should be noted that, according to these same sources, most of the police commanders are right-wing, although many don't mind getting close to the government in power, regardless of its political leaning, as long as it helps them get promoted. In other words, I don't care if the PSOE or the PP is in power, I just become friends with the current minister so they can help me get promoted. Some of DAO's favorite commanders, we're told, could include one of the 5 we've mentioned. It's possible that they might not try to be, or rather, that they might try not to be appointed. This time, given the possibility that the socialist government could fall in the next general elections in 2027 and that the PP could govern, in other words, they want to wait and not use their chance now with the Socialist Party. Well, that's how things stand. As I said, this Game of Thrones in the National Police, after the fall of the DAO, the Deputy Operational Director, José Ángel González, known as Jota, one of Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska's most trusted men, who has had to resign. Forced by the minister, obviously, after the case was admitted for processing. A lawsuit for crimes of sexual assault, coercion, psychological abuse, psychological injury against the victim, and embezzlement. And he had no choice but to leave the way he came. After 8 years, after Marlaska made a legal change so he could retire whenever he wanted, with no limit on the number of years. Well, he had to leave through the back door after that investigation that has already been opened in court. And we'll see what new developments this investigation might bring us, and of course we'll tell you about them here on Precautionary Measures with Miguel Ángel Pérez, just as we'll tell you when his replacement is chosen. Will we see this among the 5 we just analyzed, or, as I said, will they choose an outsider, someone who isn't especially prominent and hasn't been mentioned much, and put them in charge of the Deputy Operational Directorate of the Police? Don't rule out that it could be a woman, because knowing the government after they've had to kick the current one out the back door. DAO for an alleged sexual assault. Now they want to put a woman in to try to clean up the image and the damage that's been done to the police. We'll share any updates here on Precautionary Measures with Miguel Ángel Pérez. That's it for this edition of Precautionary Measures with Miguel Ángel Pérez. I hope you enjoyed the video, as always. And you already know that you can become members at the chosen level for less than €3 a month, or at the supreme level for less than €7. You can also contribute via Bizum at 627-556-370. If you like the video, you can leave a comment, comment, you already know. And of course, I take this opportunity to remind you of the email, mediascotelaresmaypigmail.com. You already know, if you like the video, you can leave, if you liked it, your comment, because the inbox is blowing up. In recent weeks, since I began discussing the police and Sanchista commanders, things have really heated up. So any information that is good, of course interesting, will be very well received. The most important thing, as I always tell you, is that this information reaches everyone, because information is power. See you soon.